watching Dante's Boxing Nation.
You told Bradley that God told you not to knock him out. So I gotta ask you, what did God tell you to do for this fight?
To the best.
Just do the best?
Yeah, yes.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? Wow, this is a hell of a year of boxing, I'm telling you. Is it just me that notices the stark contrast when it comes to the coincidental list versus the hope list? Have any of you guys noticed that all of the fighters on the hope list, which is usually the fans' favorite fighters, Gennady Golovkin, Manny Pacquiao, Canelo Alvarez, while they're all being accused of facing the weakest opposition, you have the fighters on the coincidental list facing the toughest competition, right? Andre Ward facing Sergey Kovalev, Terrence Crawford facing Victor Postol, Keith Thurman facing Sean Porter. Deontay Wilder was supposed to face Alexander Povetkin, but Povetkin couldn't pass his drug test. Jamal Charlo is facing Julian Williams. And yet, Canelo Alvarez just knocked out Amir Khan. Now he's facing Liam Smith. Gennady Golovkin is facing Kell Brook. And Manny Pacquiao is facing Jesse Vargas next. And these fighters are more praised and far more respected by the fans in boxing than all of those fighters on the coincidental list that I just mentioned. What a coincidence. Anyway, let's talk about Manny Pacquiao versus Jesse Vargas. Now, the first thing I want to say is you can't obviously blame Jesse Vargas, right? I feel bad for Jesse Vargas that he's been looked at as the biggest cherry pick for Manny Pacquiao. That's not Jesse Vargas' fault. But I tell you right now, if Jesse Vargas pulls off the upset, then he will never be looked at as a cherry pick again. But anyway, this is the reason why a lot of fans are looking at Manny Pacquiao as the man that is constantly looking for what he believes is the easiest opponent available. I want you guys to understand something. There's a difference when the promoter and the fighter, they don't want to make the fight. But when you have your promoter that wants to make a Pacquiao versus Crawford fight, and it's the fighter who's saying, nah, we don't want that guy, that makes it look even worse for Manny Pacquiao, number one. Because I know for a fact that deep down, of course Bob is not going to say it because his job is to promote a fight, Bob did not want to make Pacquiao versus Vargas. He didn't want to make it. I'm not going to mention any names, but I'm going to tell you right now, I know somebody very close to Bob Arum when it comes to this situation. And he personally told me before this Jesse Vargas fight was announced, he said, that's a terrible fight. We don't want to make that fight. This is what a guy told me inside of the top ranked circle. He told me the goal is to make Pacquiao versus Crawford. Hearing something like that makes this Pacquiao versus Jesse Vargas fight even worse. Because I know personally that Top Rank didn't even want the fight that they're selling to the public. Okay? Now I'm going to go ahead and play Pacquiao's advocate for a second. And I'll say, okay, if Manny Pacquiao's goal is to get a Floyd Mayweather fight, and he knows deep down that Crawford is too much of a risk, that he doesn't have the confidence to beat a fighter of Terrence Crawford's skill, then it definitely seems like the smart thing to do. face the easiest opponent available so that you could get that Mayweather rematch. I can understand that. But this is the one thing I cannot understand or accept. You see, when it comes to Manny Pacquiao, if this was a very rare occasion that he picked the weakest link, then it would not be as bad. But see, the problem with Manny Pacquiao, what makes the Vargas pick so bad, is the fact that Manny Pacquiao, he has a long history of having option A, B, C, and he ends up picking the weakest option on the list. This is what makes the Vargas pick look even worse. Manny Pacquiao has been doing this for years. You guys remember when Bob Arum gave him an option to either fight Amir Khan, Ruslan Provodnikov, Lucas Matisse, or a third fight with Tim Bradley. Who did he pick? He picked Tim Bradley a third time. You know, I remember it like it was yesterday. After Pacquiao had lost to Tim Bradley the first fight, and you had all these fans saying Manny Pacquiao won the fight, he won the fight easy, that was a disgraceful robbery in the sport of boxing. Tim Bradley took Manny Pacquiao's belt and what a lot of fans perceived as a robbery. So why was it Manny Pacquiao did not want to avenge his loss and face the guy who took his belt in a robbery, or in a quote-unquote robbery? You know what Manny Pacquiao said after the Tim Bradley fight? I remember like it was yesterday. He went on ESPN and he said, and because the guy actually asked him that question. He was like, well, Manny, if this guy robbed you, if you believe you won the fight, why wouldn't you fight him again in a rematch and clear this all up and get your belt back? Manny Pacquiao said, there's no reason to fight Tim Bradley again because everyone knows I beat him. No reason to fight him again because everyone knows I beat him. Now, before I get into the contradiction of him then fighting Tim Bradley 2 more times after he said there was no reason to fight him again, let's look at the calculated steps that Manny Pacquiao took right after he lost to Tim Bradley. Now, guys, I want to make this very clear. You have to understand something, because Manny Pacquiao, he has his hope insurance, so he's covered. That means when you're in a close-ass fight where you may have even lost the fight, you're going up against a fighter on the coincidental list, that insurance covers you, so therefore, now it's considered a robbery. It's one of the worst robberies ever. Despite the referee, who has no personal agenda, that was working the fight, referee Bird, he even said the fight was extremely close. It could have went either way. This is what the referee said, right? Not only did the referee say it, but the judges, they agreed with the referee. Now, let me just say this. If you go back and you watch Bradley versus Pacquiao, and I understand, once again, because Manny Pacquiao is covered, the only thing fans or decaf see is that there was no way Pacquiao could have lost that fight. That's fine. But this is all I'm saying. All I'm asking you to do is use your own eyes and use logic. If you look at the first 3 rounds, hell, actually, I'll even include the 4th round that Tim Bradley got staggered in. Because you know, it's funny, because I used to always think that was a guaranteed Manny Pacquiao round. Why? Because he staggered Tim Bradley, and that was the round where he injured Tim Bradley's ankle, right? So I always thought that was a clear-cut Manny Pacquiao round. But if you go back and you watch that 4th round, as crazy as it sounds, outside of that left hand staggering Tim Bradley was actually winning the 4th round. He was clocking Pacquiao upside the head with hooks, lead right hands, etc., etc. Now, in the first 3 rounds, Those rounds right there could have easily went towards Tim Bradley, because in the majority of those 3 rounds, Manny Pacquiao did absolutely nothing till like the last 10 or 15 seconds of the round, and then he would throw 2 or 3 big left hands. But outside of those last 10 seconds of the round, it was Tim Bradley landing all the punches. Okay? So regardless if you give Tim Bradley the first 3 rounds or you say those first 3 rounds were swing rounds, then you go to the last 3 rounds. The last 3 rounds, the championship rounds, 10 to 12, those rounds were hands down Tim Bradley's rounds. So just look at it that way. That is already 6 rounds that could have easily gone to Tim Bradley. And I didn't even include the 4th round. Coincidentally enough, when the WBO rejudged the fight, even though of course they all had the fight for Manny Pacquiao, which was no surprise, they judged the fight after the fight, like a week after the fight, after the majority of boxing fans said it was the biggest robbery in all of boxing. This is when they decide to have some judges come back and decide to judge the fight. Do you guys know how ridiculous that sounds, or how ridiculous that is? This is the reason why boxing judges, they sit alone and they're not allowed to listen to commentary. They're not allowed to watch replays or anything like that. They have to judge it right on the fly, right? So with that being said, these WBO judges, as inconsistent as they were, they had all different scorecards when they judged the fight. And a couple of the judges actually had Tim Bradley winning the 4th round. So once again, with me saying what I just said, it could be argued that Tim Bradley won the first 3 and the last 3. That fight was not a robbery. You could say it could have went either way, but you cannot say that fight was a robbery. And of course, it's only because Manny Pacquiao has his Hope insurance. You see, because Edeslani Lara, he doesn't have his Hope insurance. So when he had a close fight against Canelo Alvarez, his claim was denied. And the fans said, that's what your ass get, Lara, for not having Hope insurance. So with me saying all of this, the point that I'm making is Manny Pacquiao had a very tough fight with Tim Bradley. And deep down, even Manny Pacquiao himself did not believe that he won that fight. Hell, this picture you guys are looking at right here, this is the actual picture taken of Manny Pacquiao right after the decision was announced. Okay? This was before Jim Lampley or Max Kellerman jumped in the ring and tried to make Manny Pacquiao feel better by telling him, well, buddy, cheer up because I thought you won. Matter of fact, we all thought you won. This is before Max Kellerman said this to Manny Pacquiao. Look at this picture right here. And you tell me if that looks like a picture of a guy that just got robbed, that just lost a fight that he knows that he won. Does he look like he got robbed? Look at his manager friend right next to him. His manager friend right next to him, he doesn't look like he got robbed. They're looking like, oh my God, Manny, we lost. Oh man, Manny, I feel so bad for you that you lost. That is the interpretation of that picture right there. You go back and you look at the reactions of Edeslani Lara after the Paul Williams fight. Go back and even the Edeslani Lara fight. Go back and look at Edeslani Lara's reaction when he lost to Canelo. Go back and look at Pernell Whitaker when they gave him a draw against Julio Cesar Chavez. None of them reacted like Manny Pacquiao did in this picture. So the point is, Manny Pacquiao, deep down, He did not feel that he was robbed until Max Kellerman and the whole world started saying to Manny, look at me, Manny. You didn't lose that fight, okay? You did not lose that fight. You were robbed. You got it, Manny? You were robbed. And Manny Pacquiao said, okay, that's right, I was robbed. Okay, and then all of a sudden he started repeating everything that we heard fans say in the comment section or commentators on TV say there's no way Manny could have lost the fight. This is when we started to hear Manny regurgitate everything that he was hearing them say. Okay, so now that I explained the whole first Tim Bradley fight situation, it was really important for me to break that down for you guys because I want you to understand how this pertains to the Jesse Vargas move. Now, once again, Bob Arum, he wants Manny Pacquiao to face Tim Bradley right away and avenge his loss. And that makes all the sense in the world. Because once again, whenever a fight ends in controversy, 9 times out of 10, there is an immediate rematch. You can go back and you can look at the history of the sport, and it confirms that. You look at Holyfield versus Lennox Lewis, controversial decision, immediate rematch. You look at Roy Jones versus Montel Griffin, even though that was a different type of controversy because that fight ended in a DQ. Floyd Mayweather, close decision against Castillo, they do an immediate rematch. I could just name tons of fights. But the bottom line is, this is what usually happens. Bob Arum wanted to make a rematch. So what did Manny Pacquiao do? Manny Pacquiao, he sat back and he tried to figure out what would be the easier option. So once again, Bob Arum, he gives Manny Pacquiao some choices. Now, Manny, you could either fight Juan Manuel Marquez a 4th time, or you can fight Bradley in a rematch, right? So once again, by looking at this picture you see on the screen, you can clearly tell that Manny Pacquiao felt Tim Bradley was a tough fight. Not only was he a tough fight, but you also have to look at it this way. Pacquiao, he just fought Marquez, 3 times by that time? He fought Marquez 3 times, and the judges, they had never gave the fight to Marquez. He fights Bradley 1 time, and the judges, they give it to Tim Bradley. So that's more things for Manny Pacquiao to think about. Whoa, wait a minute. If the judges gave the decision to Tim Bradley, then there's no guarantee I'm going to win in a rematch. But I know that whenever I fight Marquez, I always get the decision, right? So once again, Bob gives Manny an option. Which one do you want, Bradley or Marquez? Manny Pacquiao, he chooses what he thinks is the easier opponent at the time. And what happens? He ends up getting knocked out by Juan Manuel Marquez in the 4th round. Now, before I go even further, let me go back to the Tim Bradley situation. Now, before he signed and agreed to fight Tim Bradley, Manny Pacquiao had another choice to make, another decision to make. And he tried to see which fight made more sense and which fight would be easier. Before the Tim Bradley fight, I forget, it was one more fighter. But Bob Arum gave Manny Pacquiao an option to either fight a rematch and fight Miguel Cotto, but this time no catch weight. You would fight him at 154. You could either fight Miguel Cotto with no catch weight at 154, or you can fight the undefeated Tim Bradley that just moved up in weight. Manny Pacquiao, he decided to fight against Tim Bradley, assuming that Tim Bradley would be the lighter puncher, the smaller guy, compared to Miguel Cotto at his natural weight. Manny Pacquiao felt he could beat Tim Bradley. And I'll tell you right now, even though Manny Pacquiao refused to fight Miguel Cotto at his full weight, Tim Bradley was still the best name, still is to this day, the best name on Manny Pacquiao's resume since he moved up. Since he moved up to 147. Since he left 135, this is the best name on his resume, Tim Bradley. So one more time before we move on, Manny Pacquiao, he had an option to either fight Miguel Cotto in a rematch at Miguel Cotto's natural weight with no catch weight. And Manny Pacquiao, he turned that fight down and he chose to fight Tim Bradley. Okay? Then once he loses to Tim Bradley and that fight turns out to be tougher than he anticipated, he has an option to either fight Tim Bradley in a rematch or fight a guy that he already beat 2 or 3 times on record, which was Juan Manuel Marquez. So does he fight the guy that beat him and avenge that loss, or does he fight a guy that he already beat? He chose to fight the guy that he already beat, Juan Manuel Marquez. Now I want to take you guys back to that third Marquez fight. Now this is really interesting right here. Now at this time, before Manny Pacquiao signed to fight Marquez a third time, he had another option. He had another opponent that he could have faced if he wanted to at the time. And you know who that was? That was Floyd Mayweather. That's right. Floyd Mayweather, they reached out to Top Rank and they wanted to make a fight right then and there at that time. Instead of Pacquiao facing Marquez, he could have fought Mayweather. Matter of fact, I had the article, but it was a long time ago. But Top Rank, they actually issued out a statement and they said that we are not interested in a Mayweather fight right now. We're going to go ahead and fight Juan Manuel Marquez instead. This is what the statement said. And we know the statement was accurate and legit because I even have an interview today where Freddie Roach is telling the public that he believes that Bob Arum wanted to keep Manny Pacquiao away from Floyd Mayweather all the way towards the end of his career. He wanted Mayweather to be Manny Pacquiao's last fight. That's what Freddie Roach said. I have the interview, okay? Now with that being said, once again, Manny Pacquiao, he had an option to either choose, or he had options to either choose Juan Manuel Marquez as his next opponent or Floyd Mayweather. Who did he choose? He chose Juan Manuel Marquez. Okay? So now let's fast forward to the fourth Marquez fight. Manny Pacquiao, he gets knocked out by Marquez in that fourth fight. Who does Manny Pacquiao fight next? He fights Brandon Rios. All right? Now, after he beats Brandon Rios, now, once again, he has a whole bunch of options on the table. Some really good options, by the way. Bob Arum says you could either fight Ruslan Provodnikov, you could fight Lucas Matisse, or you could fight Tim Bradley in a rematch, which would be the second fight by that time. And see, now Manny Pacquiao is in a bit of a conundrum. He's in a tough situation because now he can either fight the guy who technically beat him, and Manny Pacquiao has to think to himself, there's a lot of pressure on me. What if Tim Bradley ends up beating me in a rematch? Then I can no longer use the excuse I was robbed in the first fight. Just hypothetically, what if that happens? This is something that obviously had to go through Manny Pacquiao's head, right? So he says, so I could fight Tim Bradley and I could risk losing to him, or I could fight against a power puncher, a durable, strong power puncher like Ruslan Provodnikov, who at the time was no joke, or Lucas Matisse, who at the time was no joke. Who should I fight? So once again, Manny Pacquiao, he had Lucas Matisse, he had Ruslan Provodnikov, and he had Tim Bradley on the table. Who did he pick? He picked Tim Bradley. And we all know Tim Bradley is not known for his power. We know Ruslan Provodnikov and Lucas Matisse, they are, which is why those would have been such great fights, right? So he chooses Tim Bradley a second time. Then, after the Floyd Mayweather fight, Manny Pacquiao, he comes back after he loses to Floyd Mayweather. Now he has some more fantastic options on the table. Amir Khan, I believe Ruslan Provodnikov was still an option. Lucas Matisse was an option. And then you had, of course, a third fight with Tim Bradley. Who did he choose? He chose Tim Bradley. So guys, if you think about it, by this time, we could have seen Pacquiao versus Amir Khan, Lucas Matisse, Ruslan Provodnikov, but instead we got Tim Bradley, and Tim Bradley. Oh yeah, and Marquez. Which now brings us to Manny Pacquiao versus Jesse Vargas. Manny Pacquiao, he had options to face Terrence Crawford, which we all know. You are a complete idiot if you're going to sit over here and tell anyone that Manny Pacquiao versus Jesse Vargas is a bigger fight than Terrence Crawford versus Manny Pacquiao. So quite frankly, you had Terrence Crawford on the table. Now, to Pacquiao's defense, they did offer Adrian Broner a fight. Now, I don't know what to believe when it comes to the Danny Garcia situation, because Danny said he was offered a fight. Bob Arum said they never offered him a fight. I don't really know what to believe when it comes to that. I think I would probably side more with Danny Garcia. There's no reason for a man to make up the fact that someone offered him a fight and he said it wasn't enough. That doesn't make sense to me. But regardless, we know two fighters that would have took the same offer that Danny Garcia or Adrian Broner allegedly turned down. And that is Keith Thurman, and that is Terrence Crawford. We know for a fact that if they were offered that money, they would have took it. Okay? And you know, when it comes to the Adrian Broner situation, when you have a fighter as popular as Adrian Broner, a fighter that you know is going to sell the fight more than Manny Pacquiao will, there had to be some way that Bob Arum could have accommodated Adrian Broner. And I mean, they didn't have to give him half, 50-50 or anything like that, but if he's asking for a little bit more money, they should have at least did a little bit of negotiating just to see where serious negotiations would have went. So, you know, when I first found out that Manny Pacquiao was coming back, and I kept hearing Bob Arum say the options on the list are Danny Garcia, Adrian Broner, Terrence Crawford, I'm sitting over here saying, oh, this is great. This is great for Manny Pacquiao. This is great for boxing, because I'm saying to myself, for the very first time, Manny Pacquiao, no matter which option he has, he's going to have to face someone tough. Someone that's not tailor-made, someone that he didn't beat already, etc., etc. In other words, a new, fresh talent, a young, hungry, strong lion, because that's pretty much what we would have got if Pacquiao would have went up against a Danny Garcia or a Terrence Crawford. Even an Adrian Broner fight, even though a lot of us believe Pacquiao would have won that fight, that would have been a great barometer to just see how Manny Pacquiao would do against little bro, you know, Floyd Mayweather's little bro, as Adrian Broner puts it. It would have been really interesting to see how he does against Adrian Broner. And once again, Adrian Broner, he would have sold the shit out of the fight. So with names like Danny Garcia, Adrian Broner, Terrence Crawford on the table, we end up getting Jesse Vargas. And I'm going to tell you guys right now, Like I said, this is not Jesse Vargas' fault, and hopefully this is more motivation for Jesse Vargas to win this fight, because I truly believe just because Manny Pacquiao made this move, I truly believe that a lot of people, they won't be satisfied unless Jesse Vargas pulls off the upset and wins. If Jesse Vargas doesn't win, then people are going to be even more upset because Manny Pacquiao was able to pick who he thought was the weakest link, and if he beats Jesse Vargas, that means Manny Pacquiao was right. So at the end of the day, when you look deeper into Manny Pacquiao's resume, you'll find out that he has never really faced any young, hungry, undefeated, strong lions, right? Like he's never beat any Canelos. He's never even really beat any Marcos Maidanas. Guys that will come in the ring 17 to 20 pounds bigger than him, that are extremely strong, maybe even be stronger than Manny Pacquiao. Manny has never really faced opponents like that. All of Manny Pacquiao's best opponents were Antonio Margarito, Miguel Cotto, who else? Ricky Hatton, Shane Mosley, and Joshua Clottey. And you know what all of those fighters have in common? All of those fighters were coming off of their biggest, not just coming off a loss, but coming off of their biggest loss when they faced Manny Pacquiao. And some of them were coming off of knockout losses when they fought against Manny Pacquiao. Now the interesting thing is, when Manny Pacquiao fought against Shane Mosley had just came off of a loss to Floyd Mayweather, and then he had like a draw against Sergio Mora. That's when Manny Pacquiao decided to face him. But get this though, when Manny Pacquiao, or when Shane Mosley rather, had knocked out Antonio Margarito, and Shane Mosley was considered the #1 welterweight in the world. He was considered the #1 welterweight in the world. Shane Mosley drove all the way down to Freddie Roach's gym, and he called out Manny Pacquiao directly. He said, "Let's make the fight." You know what Freddie Roach said? He said, "Nah, we're not going to take that fight." And Shane said, "Well, I mean, you took the fight with Miguel Cotto." And you know what Freddie Roach said? He said, "You ain't no Miguel Cotto. You're much better than Miguel Cotto." This is what Freddie Roach told Shane Mosley, right? So why did all of a sudden Manny Pacquiao have a change of heart? Because Shane Mosley, after that, Shane lost to Floyd Mayweather. And then he ended up having a draw against Sergio Mora. Now that's so funny, because when Floyd Mayweather faced Shane Mosley, this is the same Shane Mosley that not even Manny Pacquiao wanted to face. So if Shane Mosley was over the hill and all this crazy shit the decaf say today, how do you explain the fact that that same Shane Mosley Manny Pacquiao didn't want to fight, but Floyd Mayweather fought him, right? And you tell me, in history, when in history has there ever been a fighter that was considered #1, the best fighter in that division, that was considered past his prime and washed up? That's like saying the #1 seed in football that's about to go to the playoffs is one of the worst teams in the league. Does that make any sense? It doesn't make any sense at all. But you know, when a fighter on the coincidental list is involved, that's when they change the rules, as they always do. If you can't beat them, you simply change the rules. Then we can go all the way back to the lightweight division. When Manny Pacquiao was fighting at lightweight, at the time, the best lightweight in the division was Nate Campbell, the Galaxy Warrior. He was the best lightweight in the division at the time. And you know what Manny Pacquiao decided to do? They bypassed him, and they end up facing the flat-footed, walking punching bag David Diaz to win a title, when Nate Campbell was the real champion at that division. And I talked to Nate Campbell. Matter of fact, I have that video up as well. Nate Campbell, he talks about pushing for that fight, and he met some of Manny Pacquiao's people, and they told him directly, they said, we're not putting Manny Pacquiao nowhere close to you. This is what Nate Campbell is saying. So once again, man, if you look at the history of Manny Pacquiao's resume, what you will find out is, outside of Tim Bradley, which I give him credit for that fight, even though he lost the first fight, Manny Pacquiao, he hasn't faced anyone, at least compared to his nemesis record, Floyd Mayweather. Manny Pacquiao, he hasn't really faced anyone since he beat Barrera, Morales, Marquez, and the African-led Babwa. Now just imagine if from here he beats Jesse Vargas and then he loses to Mayweather in a rematch. Do you know how bad that's going to make Manny Pacquiao's legacy look? Because the fact that he tried to use that excuse that backfired on him, that his shoulder was, the reason why he lost to Floyd Mayweather. So if you go in there in a rematch and you lose the exact same way, or knowing Floyd Mayweather, Floyd in a rematch, I can almost assure you Floyd is going to be even much better, because Floyd is so far advanced when it comes to his thinking, the way he processes things. If he's already fought you 12 rounds, he has footage to actually study. Can you imagine how much better a thinker like Floyd Mayweather would be with that kind of advantage, right? I mean, it's one thing that he can already watch fighters that he's never fought before, but you actually have footage of you in the ring with him already. And you have the memories of you being in the ring with him already. I believe in a rematch, Floyd Mayweather would put a serious hurting on Manny Pacquiao. There is nothing Manny Pacquiao is going to change. Once again, we know the shoulder injury is some bullshit, because first Manny Pacquiao, he said that his shoulder was hurt before the fight. But then when there were threats of people suing Manny Pacquiao, because they're like, why did you go into this fight knowing you weren't 100%? We were betting money. I wouldn't have paid for this fight if I knew that you went in this fight knowing that you were injured. When all that came up, then Manny Pacquiao changed the story and said, oh no, I changed my mind, guys. I wasn't hurt before the fight. I had the injury around the 4th round, right? So then he changes it to the 4th round. But then when you go and you watch the fight, you clearly see this man throwing the shit out of his right hand. He never went back to his corner and even hinted at Freddie Roach that something was wrong with his shoulder. He never fought with one hand. Never. Now, there was not one single round in this fight did Manny Pacquiao fight with one hand. So we know that that is malarkey when he talks about this damn shoulder injury. So now you go in there with Floyd Mayweather in a rematch and you lose again. You know how bad that makes you look? It makes you look like an even bigger liar. So see, this is the reason why I always say to fans, when it comes to Manny Pacquiao, if he can't beat Floyd Mayweather, the least Manny Pacquiao could do is he could try to find one of these young lions to beat. Because now Manny Pacquiao's career, if he loses to Floyd Mayweather, he'll just be looked at as an overrated fighter that lost to Floyd Mayweather. And the majority of opponents he beat, they were opponents that Floyd Mayweather had already beat. They were a lot of fighters that had already been knocked out before, etc., etc. But if you can beat one of these young lions, you save face a little bit. Once again, just like Roberto Duran. Now, Roberto Duran, he's definitely overrated when it comes to one of the greatest, because there is no way a fighter on the coincidental list could lose to every single great in his era and be ranked above some of them. That would only happen when you have your hope insurance, which Roberto Duran, he has, and he was covered. But anyway, Roberto Duran got knocked out by Hearns, lost to Hagler, lost to Sugar Ray Leonard. He lost 2 out of 3 to Sugar Ray Leonard. He lost to Wilfredo Benitez. He lost to a couple lesser fighters that weren't even on the level of a Sugar Ray Leonard or a Hagler. They were just journeymen. He lost to them while in his prime. He lost to all of these guys, right? But what Roberto Duran did to make up for losing some of the biggest fights in his career is he resurrected his career by knocking off a young, strong, hungry lion, an undefeated hungry lion by the name of Davey Moore. He knocked him out, and that made up for a lot of his losses. Now, when I say made up, I don't want to make it sound like it completely made up, but let's just say it turned out to be a well-needed consolation prize. So that's what Manny Pacquiao is going to need right now, is a consolation prize. Now, I know people can still say that Manny Pacquiao, he was one of the best fighters of this generation, which is true. But there's a reason, and I told people this, there's a reason why Manny Pacquiao has returned. I told people when Manny Pacquiao first retired after he lost to Mayweather, he was going to come back. Why? Because deep down it is hurting him that he lost to Floyd Mayweather. You guys have to understand something. See, decaps don't understand this shit. All of that personal hate you have for Floyd Mayweather, what you really did is you end up putting a lot more pressure on your fighter, Manny Pacquiao, to beat him. And with putting all that pressure on Manny Pacquiao, it hurt him that much more when he lost, because he knew that he was supposed to be the man to beat Floyd Mayweather. Let Manny Pacquiao tell it. God even put pressure on him, because if you listen to what Manny Pacquiao says, he was telling us that God already told him that he's going to win the fight, and etc., etc. So could you imagine having people put that much pressure on you to beat this man Floyd Mayweather in the most important fight of your career, the fight of the century, and you are known for losing that fight? That's not a good feeling. And that's the reason why Manny Pacquiao will continue to fight. And I wouldn't be surprised if he gets the Mayweather fight, loses that fight, and still continues to fight, because he's going to continue chasing that loss. Just like Roy Jones, he continued to chase the Antonio Tarver loss. It happens, man. It happens. So I guess I've been talking for long enough now, right? That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one.
This is Bobby, and you're watching Dante's Boxing Nation.